You know, just a little bit of context, I think, is necessary. Because we have now invoked the big B word. We have entered into Bandha land. Okay. And Bandha land is not as well laid out a territory in the yoga world as alignment land. Alignment land, you know, the maps are pretty well known. There's only so many ways that you can talk about where the joints of the bodies should be in terms of how they are put together and how they relate to each other. And this discussion has been happening for the better part of 50 years, at least in the West. You know, when Mr. Iyengar started spreading his teachings more widely. You know, it's a very mature discussion, I would say, at this point. And by its very nature, it's much more of a reductionistic thing because you're relating to the skeletal elements of the body and how they align and so on. But the Bandha conversation, that's barely 20 years old, you know, because prior to around 20 years ago, you have to remember I've been doing this for 31 years, whenever Bandha was spoken of, it was not the way we're talking about it now. It was something you did when you were holding your breath. It was done on a retention. It was something that was related to pranayama, not asana practice. You know, take a breath, exhale, do the bandhas, you know, or whatever. But the breath was not moving, the body wasn't moving. As soon as the Ashtanga techniques started getting taught and practiced more widely, all of a sudden there's this whole other discussion about bandha, which is something you do while your breath is moving, while your body is moving. And a lot of misinformation got spread in those early days. For example, you should be contracting your inner sphincter 24 hours a day. Something like that. That's not too much of an exaggeration. I mean, there were people going around saying you should be holding Mula Bandha, which, by the way, means contracting your anal sphincter all the time, because that's the right way to do. That's the right way to breathe. That's the right way to be. You know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Someone.
When I was 17, a teacher told me I need to contract my anal sphincter constantly all the time when I'm practicing yoga.
Yeah, you weren't enough of an uptight asshole to begin with. You needed to really, yeah, okay.
I agree. Why did I put it 20 years ago?
Well, I'm marking it from the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s. There were Ashtanga teachers and practitioners prior to that. Obviously, we know who they are, we know where they were, but in terms of it catching on like wildfire, you can mark that from when certain people met Pattabhi Jois, started bringing him back to the States. East Coast was Jivamukti, West Coast was Yoga Works. You know, these are all friends of mine, friends of ours. We know who these people are. And the thing is, it really caught on because now, wow, you're getting a workout. You're sweating. This is very physical practice. Gyms loved it. People who go to gyms loved it, you know. And so it caught on, and it influenced this whole wave of popularity that we've experienced in the yoga world, the vinyasa style, the flowing style of practice, you know. But I have it on good authority that Pattabhi Jois never said that. He never said you should keep your anal sphincter contracted all the time. In fact, I don't think he ever said an English sentence that was even that long. Any sentence. His advice to people about breathing was free breathing. Free breathing.
Louder.
Yeah, louder. Yeah, he wants to hear you your ujjayi. But, you know, it makes you wonder a little bit where all of this sophisticated stuff around the bandhas came from when the prime teacher barely speaks English. and the people that are giving the advice don't speak his language. Now, there are a few people that do speak his language, who we should listen to. People who know Sanskrit, who know Kannada, okay? And they are the ones who've been able to have a little more kind of detailed communication with someone like Batavi Joyce. Richard Freeman comes to mind. Our friend Eddie comes to mind. A few others, right? So, but all that aside, that's a bit of the history and the context. This whole idea that Bandha is something that's done in movement, with breath, moving, is a relatively new concept in the yoga world. It's a new context. And the anatomical basis of the bandhas is something that really needs to be looked at a little more clearly, and hopefully this will help.